Trump is back in the news for his unique commentary. This time, the former American president has called the January 6th committee a kangaroo court. Trump released a 12-page statement where he said that the investigation was designed to distract American citizens from, quote-unquote, the disaster of the Democrat government. The comments came after the committee began its second hearing into the Capitol siege. On the 6th of January 2021, hundreds of Trump supporters stormed the US Capitol after his electoral loss. The former president said that 17 months after the events of January the 6th, the Democrats are unable to offer solutions and that they are, and I quote, desperate to change the narrative of a failing nation without even making mention of the havoc and death caused by the radical left just months earlier. In his statement, Trump referred to the Select Committee as a pseudo committee of treason. To get us more on this story, we're joined live by our correspondent Susan Tarani, who's in New York City. Well, Susan, Donald Trump clearly displeased by this second hearing. What can we make from this 12-page statement that he released?
Well, you know, Nick, it's no surprise that Donald Trump was going to react to the hearing in some way or form. We were expecting that he was going to release a statement, considering the fact that he was, he doesn't have a platform, at least on Twitter or Facebook or other social media platforms, to respond publicly in that way. On the one hand, you see really his inner circle coming out, and whether through subpoenas or voluntary cooperation, speaking and challenging his claims regarding the 2020 presidential elections, something that he still believes. And then on the other hand, you have this committee, which is sort of, if you can compare it to a sports game, it's sort of the home team in the home court playing a home game. There isn't really a cross-examination by any Republicans who can sort of challenge these witnesses, which is a disservice, because you see these really strong witnesses, someone like former Attorney General Bill Barr, who could have withstood cross-examinations. However, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sort of prevented that. And I think if we had sort of Republicans that were on this committee and would have been able to cross-examine these witnesses, the committee would have had sort of more bipartisan support, more credibility, and then, Donald Trump's statements wouldn't have resonated with so many other Republicans as well. But, Donald Trump is being Donald Trump, and we wouldn't have expected anything else. I mean, it's a Donald Trump bashing committee at this point. And again, that's unfortunate. We'll see how the other committees play out, what they plan on saying. But the main question really right now should be what to do to prevent something like January 6th from happening again.
Well, the focus of that second hearing was really on Trump's voter fraud claims during the 2020 polls. It sought to make the case that Trump ignored the advice of many of his own staffers when he said that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Our witnesses will detail the Select Committee's findings.
The second public hearing took place on Monday, and it started with Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, pulling out at the last minute after his wife went into labour. The Select Committee opted to present parts of his previous deposition to help illustrate his testimony. Then there was the former Attorney General, William Barr, who in his testimony made the case of the committee stronger by saying that Trump brought out a report with no real qualifications and believed it to the fullest.
When I walked in, sat down, he went off on a monologue saying that there was now definitive evidence involving fraud through the Dominion machines. And a report had been prepared by a very reputable cybersecurity firm, which he identified as Allied Security Operations Group, and he held up the report, and then he asked that a copy of it be made for me. And while a copy was being made, he said, this is absolute proof that the Dominion machines were rigged. The report means that I'm going to have a second term.
And it was not just Barr that talked about the authenticity of that report looking into voting machines made by Dominion. Former White House lawyer Eric Hersham also expressed the same concerns during his testimony.
I thought the Dominion stuff I never saw any evidence whatsoever to sustain those allegations.
Wyoming GOP Congresswoman Liz Cheney also spoke about Donald Trump and his loyalists' claims of voter fraud. She said that they knew there was no argument and that the said report was based on irregularities.
The Trump campaign legal team knew there was no legitimate argument, fraud, irregularities, or anything to overturn the election. And yet President Trump went ahead with his plans for January 6th anyway. Mr. Chairman, hundreds of our countrymen have faced criminal charges. Many are serving criminal sentences because they believed what Donald Trump said about the election, and they acted on it.
The committee said that Trump had sidelined his legal team and brought in advisers like Rudy Giuliani, who believed and backed up the claims of fraud. Statements were also made on the amount of alcohol he'd consumed during the night.
Was there anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
Like Rudy Giuliani.
Trump's daughter and his son-in-law also testified during the second hearing. They said that they were present at the White House attending an event that evening. Ivanka Trump was asked by the committee members about her views on her father's claims.
What was your view at the time as to what he should or shouldn't say?
I don't know that I had a firm view as to what he should say in that circumstance. The results were still being counted. It was becoming clear that the race would not be called on election night.
Well, joining us again is Susan Tarani in New York to break down what we heard during that second day of committee hearings. Well, Susan, we've had 2 public hearings now for the January 6th committee. There are more scheduled in the coming weeks. What are the Democrats trying to do with these hearings?
The Democrats are trying to pin everything on Donald Trump, saying that he's solely responsible for the events that happened on January 6th. And ultimately, maybe perhaps while the committee can't bring formal criminal charges against him, maybe bring some, take this committee and its findings and bring some kind of charge against Donald Trump through the Justice Department, so he can't run again, or, maybe get a charge. We'll have to wait and see regarding that. But, the Democrats have to be very careful because that might play in the hands of the Republicans ultimately. There are Republicans right now who kind of hope that Donald Trump will take a black seat regarding the Republican Party and sort of not be this kingmaker. And if he's taken out of the leadership of the Republican Party, then the Republican Party can sort of have a free hand in running in 2024. So that's just a side note that what the Democrats are trying to do. But again, Americans want to find answers on what really happened in 2024 in terms of security, why these events happened on January 6th, how, the Capitol building can't be stormed again in the future. I think these are main questions. We'll have to see if this hearing, takes a direction to that. But for now, it seems like it's very hyper-focused on Donald Trump. And I'm not sure whether or not, the Americans that I've talked to, unless, they're very anti-Trump, they're focused on something like that and they want to see something like this from the hearing. And whether or not there'll be a bipartisan consensus at the end of the day, at the end of these hearings, if the direction is focused only on Donald Trump.
Susan Tarani live for us in New York City. Thanks as always for your analysis, Susan.